Creativity is one of Jamaica's most distinct assets and can be exercised through different mediums. This week on CAMEO, we take a look at Jamaican illustrators. Rachel Moss's work ranges from children's book illustrations to acrylic on canvas. She has exhibited in various shows across the Caribbean and Jamaica and was awarded a gold medal and merit in the JCDC exhibition in 2006.
I actually studied 2D animation in England, and I found the process a bit tedious. And I do like to illustrate, so I more ventured towards illustration after college. Illustration is a creative process. It's basically bringing to life someone's vision or an artwork brief. So for example, if you wrote a storybook and you wanted it illustrated, like you wanted pictures in it, I would probably do that. Or if you wanted a logo or a poster or anything visual that is either digital or on actual paper. That's basically what illustration is. Some clients I've worked for: Ministry of Education, Kelly Magnus, Crayons Count, Pearson Publishers, Carlong Publishers, Diane Brown. Yeah, there's different types of illustration. I would say there's a more graphic design based illustration. So for example, logo design. There's digital illustration, which is done on a computer. There's 2D illustration, which is what I would do, but I can digitalize that as well. And I specialize in children's books, so I more focus on that area. And my process is basically drawing it by hand and then using the computer to edit it, so it's digitalized. So an author will write a story, and they can either have a vision in their head what they want. So sometimes they will send me the manuscript and they'll have an artwork description beside each page or each paragraph. So for example, the little girl jumps in the pond, and she'll write that down, and I will see that and then sketch it for her and send them the sketch, and they'll either approve it or want to tweak it. And then when it's approved, I'll start to color it. And then I send them either digital, usually it's digital because in this day and age everything is digital. And then I also do book layout, so sometimes I'll lay out the book for them and then we send it to print. And it can also be that they have the manuscript and they don't have no idea what they want, and I will come up with the images to suit what they have written. One of the major challenges in this field is that illustration is a competitive business, so there are many illustrators out there. And in the Caribbean, a challenge for illustrators is that a lot of authors tend to self-publish. There aren't many publishing houses that can afford to really take stories and really publish them. So a lot of authors self-publish, and it's very expensive to do so because they have to put up the illustration cost and the printing cost. And that's a challenge in itself because a lot of the time they can't afford an illustrator to illustrate their book. So I would say that's a major challenge, especially in Jamaica, because when the book does go on the market, it's so expensive that a lot of people can't afford to buy the book. So that affects the author and it affects the illustrator in retrospect. Another challenge is that, the local market is very saturated with books that are from overseas publishers, and those publishers print off their books in excess. So they just send these books down to Caribbean countries and they sell them off very cheaply. And so for a little girl or a boy to go into a store, they want to buy the cheapest book that they can afford. And so they will pick up that book instead of a locally done book. And that also is a challenge. So I think if we got a lot of funding or support in that area to help the local industry or the Caribbean industry really, stand on its feet, I think that would be a great asset to Illustrator. How do you price creativity? I guess you have to look at the value of what you're doing. So for example, if you go into a store, what do you pick up? Why do you pick up this product over this product? Is it because the label attracts you? Does the label draw your eye to it? Why do you buy this children's book over this children's book? Have you even read the story, or is it the illustrations that are jumping out of you? Or what sells a book? Is it the cover or the inside of the book, So I guess people need to value the job of the illustrator or what we can do for you. And a lot of the times, like you said, a challenge is that people don't really see the value in what you're doing, and they say, oh, that's too expensive, but yet it's a very time-consuming job, or it's a lot of back and forth between the clients. So I take all those things into consideration when I'm pricing my work. I think about how many hours it might take me, especially if it's a logo design, how much back and forth I might have to do, or what kind of exposure this job might get. And so all of those things, it can be someone who's just doing a small project, and then, that's a completely different ball game to say a big corporation, like, one that is international per se, paying you to do something. I think awareness, and also if the industry is standardized, like I mentioned, illustrators dropping their price a lot. I think if they can charge a more industry rate. So I guess, for example, we can look at what illustrators abroad are charging and kind of adjust it, because obviously our economy is a little different. But that's a good starting point. And I guess you just have to sometimes work with the client, because different clients are coming from different places, and we just have to say, look, this is worth this, or this, it's going to take this amount of time and this amount of back and forth, and hopefully they'll understand. When someone has an idea in their head, and what an illustrator can do is bring that idea to life. And I think that's a creative process in itself. And the thing I love about illustration is that it's not in the box, it's not rigid. So for example, if I'm doing something for children, I know my tiger doesn't have to look exactly like a tiger. It can be very whimsical, or I can just put all the colors that I need to put into it and make a child happy. So I think the mere fact that you can just put someone in a different place or bring them into a different world, I think that's a creative process in itself. Just like music, just like dance, it just takes the person who is viewing it into a different world completely. My future plan, I think, is to get an agent. I think that might help with this field, especially overseas. I plan to try and broaden my horizons. I plan to focus on publishers abroad and here as well. But I think this job also requires a lot of promotion. You have to promote yourself, you have to be on social media, you have to just get your work out there. And I think that's something I'm gonna work on in the future.
Coming up next, Peter Ann Smith. Peter Ann Smith has been professionally illustrating since 2012. As a child, she had a love for cartoons and drawing. She talks to us about her journey.
Basic definition of illustration is to graphically depict an idea or a story. So for example, if someone says that they have an article, you can do articles as well. And they say they want an image to go with it, but they don't necessarily want a photograph. So this is where an illustrator would come in. So they use their drawing skills and their graphic design skills to come up with something that would suit the client and the subject of it. A lot of imagination comes into play, because even if you have to do research and look for reference materials and such, it requires quite a bit of your own, may I say, mental input. So if there is a situation where you can't quite find the reference that you want, or the time frame is really short, so that's where the whole problem solving creativity part comes in, how you can make this thing work to satisfy the client, or if it's a personal project, how you can make it work to satisfy you. I've been drawing for as long as I can remember, and I first encountered illustration through children's books, the picture books and such. I saw these lovely images and said, hey, I can do this. But at the time, I didn't really think of it as a profession. I didn't know what illustration was until I got much older. So once I found out that was a possibility, I started looking more into it, what I would need to do and what it entails, how I can bring myself up to scratch, so to speak, so that I could make a career out of it. It's a process. I'm not going to lie, I'm not quite quote unquote there yet, but I'm enjoying the process of getting there. A lot of learning is involved. I was involved in a project through one of my lecturers, David Suter at the time, and I was part of a team that illustrated for a booklet for Jamaica Association for the Deaf. The whole purpose of that book was to help parents of newly diagnosed deaf children, the different resources that are available to them to help them cope with the fact that they now have a deaf child, how they can communicate with the child, how they can ensure that the child can be a fully functioning member of society, in terms of school, church, etc. And it was a fun project and gave me a taste of what's out there on a professional level. And then right after my final year, actually at my final year show, I got my first children's book job. So that took a while. Like I said, a bit of a learning curve, because when you're in school you have an idea of what it is, and then when you go out and you experience it, you say, oh, there's a bit more to it. So it took a while, and my client was very patient. We got it done. Getting into the industry, especially if you're fresh out of school and such, getting clients, because when you're new, most people, hardly anybody will know you. So how I've gotten most of my work is through referrals, through connections, people I've networked with or worked with before. So that can be a challenge, but to get around it, you just have to force yourself out there, put yourself out there more, promote yourself more, get out talking more to people, showcasing your work on a digital portfolio, or if you have a physical portfolio, you can find ways to display it, maybe some shows or such. Another issue that not just illustrators, a lot of people within the creative field have encountered is that, yes, they might find clients, but oftentimes those clients don't respect that they're running a business. So they might want work, but they either don't want to pay, or they want to pay very little. And if they want to pay very little, they take their own sweet time to pay. So it's having people in the public respecting the creative field as a viable business. The same way if you would go to the supermarket and you want stuff, you can just take it off the shelf and tell the proprietor, say, I don't have all the money right now, but I just take in this and I might pay you later, or you can hold off for a couple of months, The main way you can monetize is through selling your services. Like for me, I'm an illustrator, so if people want images drawn for them, painted for them and such, for either their children's book or an article or even merchandise, I can do that. Another way that you can monetize your creativity is you could sell yourself as a teacher. So you have websites online now that make it a little easier for you, like Skillshare, and I think Udemy.com is one, where you develop your course. Now that will take time. You develop your course, you put it online, and over time you can still be working on something and people will still be learning from your course because it's pre-recorded, it's out there. So that could be another income source for you, for as long as you have the course up. And you have the option of going in, maybe modifying a few things. So say for example, people signed up early on. They would be, what you call it, they're grandfathered into the system, so if you keep on upgrading, maybe adding different aspects to the course, those people who are already there, they'd benefit. Of course, new people coming in, they'd pay the new price, and you'd still be able to earn money from that. Well, first things first, if you're entering into the creative industry, in particular, you have to conduct yourself as a business person. You cannot treat it as a hobby. If you treat it as a hobby, then it will pay you like a hobby, and people will disrespect you as a hobbyist. Because as I mentioned before, you have clients out there, they want you to deliver a ton of work, quality work, and they don't want to pay you. Or they might want to pay you very little. So if you conduct yourself professionally, you know your worth, you know your value, you know what you bring to the table, then you can be firm in that you're not taking any foolishness from them. You put it politely, of course. You said, all right, these are my terms. This is what I will work with. This is how I will do the work for you, with you, etc. Promotion, marketing and promotion is a major thing. Unfortunately, they don't really cover that in school, so it's really on you to go out there and seek resources and how you can do that as an artist. Now, for me, I went through about 2 years. I was looking at various ways to promote myself, but they were in more traditional general business terms, and just by chance I came across an artist who was selling such a course marketed towards Illustrator. So yeah, I jumped on that pretty quickly because I figured if I sacrifice a little bit of money and time to learn this now, it would save me from wasting more time and maybe losing out on more earning possibilities later on if I keep trying to figure this thing out on my own.
Coming up next. Mike Robinson is director at Nucleus Creative Limited, a creative consultancy based in Jamaica with clients all over the globe.
We do a lot of things, mainly branding and what you call corporate media, which covers social media, it covers radio and TV production, speech writing. A big part of it is the first part, just understanding what you're illustrating, understanding what it is that either the book wants from you or the client wants from you, or both. I think that's key to it, because at the end of the day, that's really what you're trying to get. And then having absorbed that information with the research, find out as much as I can about whatever it is, and look for references, things that might inform what needs to be part of the drawing, and then draw. Start with sketches, rough ideas, words. I mean, the initial stages of something like that could look like a lot of rubbish, really, on a piece of paper. And an idea could come from a thumbnail sketch, or an idea could come from a couple words that were scribbled on the side of the page. I've been drawing since I was 4, and I knew what I wanted to do since I was 4. But I spent a lot of time along the way thinking that it's not a way to make money. Like, I was told that a lot as a young person. So I ended up studying chemistry, and I got back around to it relatively late in life, I would say. And I guess what started it off was the Little Lion series. I have a couple of those. But what started it off was that I got a call from somebody I knew who had gone into publishing, and she vaguely remembered that I had drawn something at some point, and an illustrator had actually dropped out of her project, and she just asked me if it's something I could do, and I thought it was something I could do, and that was the first book that I did. You have different styles of illustration, right? You have illustrators who will draw exactly what they see, which there's a certain discipline to that. There's a certain art to actually being able to put back out something that is close to what you're seeing, because most people tend to interpret what they're seeing and put something else down. Like a stick man don't look like a man, but we think he's a man. And there are people who will draw that when asked to draw a man. But then there are people who will literally draw something that looks like a photograph. Some people don't think that's creative, but I think it's the same process. But then the kind of creativity you probably are talking about now is when you get that person's interpretation of what these things should be looking like. I think there's a split between the people who actually produce the work and the people who need to make it sell. And there are a lot of things. It sounds simple enough, but it boils down to a lot of things. It boils down to the quality of the output, because if you do something that the client doesn't think is good, you need to do something else. Whether or not that is better is questionable, but at the end of the day, it's a client who may or may not be qualified to sign off on that work, who's telling you what you should be drawing, and that's what goes out at the end of the day. From a business standpoint, I think that a lot of illustrators are not business people, and I think that's a challenge. As an industry, I think that's a challenge, because it means that you're not getting an industry that's growing. You're getting a lot of individuals doing things, and this sort of overall growth that could be happening isn't. That's what I think from a business standpoint. But there's also, I guess, the fact that we don't manufacture certain things. So an illustrator could draw something, but for it to become a book, the price of it is so great that it is not going to be competitive on a shelf. I think if there was a way for the people who do these things, like the people who create illustrations, the people who publish them, people who distribute them, I think if there was a way to bring these people together, I don't know if that means a conference, I don't know if that means an organization, but I think that if there are more partnerships, instead of everybody just trying to make the most money they can out of the arrangement, I think we'd be able to overcome a lot of these challenges. I think people talk a lot about Brand Jamaica, and that's a part of it. I mean, Brand Jamaica is essentially IP, is intellectual property, and it is about monetizing creativity. But you can do it in different ways, and especially nowadays with what's happening online and with digital stuff. It has to do with understanding what your asset is as a creative, and it starts there. And once you understand that and you have enough knowledge of the sort of avenues that you need to go through to protect this stuff, I think that forms the basis of how you're going to monetize it. After that is up to you, really. So if you, say, have a movie and you understand how you're going to protect that, you understand what part of that is yours and how you protect it. Once it's protected, you can pretty much go out there and come up with your own ideas about how you're going to make the money from it. Movies, nowadays there's Netflix. Netflix is actually paying, and more people are actually paying to produce content. Not just in movies, but in other areas, because content is sort of coming to the fore now in different forms. So I would say it's about visibility and about creativity. Jamaica is finite. It's relatively small compared to the bigger world markets, like you said. And it really doesn't take much more than a Wi-Fi connection for a creative to do business with somebody somewhere else, unless you're making something tangible. And even then, you know, they're shipping, but you can do business just about anywhere nowadays. And I agree. I mean, there are people who are already outsourcing animation to Jamaica from Europe. You know, it is one of the areas I think that has great potential in that respect. It would be nice if the government would keep that in mind, because I think that they could make it easier for people who are trying to do business that way to do business that way. And they could also push it a little bit, you know. Because of the exchange rate, what we charge, even what we charge as what we think are good rates, are more than reasonable for somebody from the States. I'm not familiar with the European prices, but I mean, our prices are probably about between 40 and 60% of what somebody else is charging to do the same stuff in the States. Talking to other people who are already in it and other people who have succeeded at it is a good way to go. Industry is a little competitive because it's small, but I think you will always find, especially in illustration, you always find somebody ready to talk to another person who's interested. I mean, just along my journey, I pretty much ended up speaking to just about everybody who's doing it now. I mean, within my generation. Just because somebody might call to ask you a question, or somebody might have a project that they thought you might be interested in. And along the way, you end up interacting, and I learned a lot just from that alone. And there are also models in the States. There's a lot of advancements that have already happened in the States that we could learn from here, I would say. So I would say just, you know, learn as much as you can from everywhere.
And that's it this week for CAMEO. Even in the midst of challenges, our creative industries continue to shine. I've been your host, Amita Prasad Webb.